Business of Software, welcome back to 2019. May you crank it up to 11 like Lemmy. We're joined today by one of our speakers from Business of Software US last year, Rahul Vohra from Superhuman. He talked about product market fit engine, and so pleased to have him online today to talk about what he's been up to, and we're going to be asking questions from the audience as well as a few that we've had sent through already. We were going to be doing this on Zoom, but 2 minutes before we went online, Zoom went down. So apologies for anyone that's watching this in retrospect. I'm sure we can pick up some of the questions that you've got as you come through. So without any further ado, let me introduce Rahul Vohra. Through the magic of slightly weird television, we have a little audience over here in the Bradfield Centre who've just watched the video and have got some questions. And once again, really apologise to anyone who hasn't been able to join it. Rahul, welcome. How's everything?
Things are great, thank you. I'm glad we finally got this going.
Excellent. Yes, so am I. Did you have a good break, or were you working flat out as usual?
A little bit of both. I went up to Tahoe for a bit, so did a few days of skiing. I say skiing, I was just throwing myself off a mountain, really.
Excellent. Right, we've got some questions. John Doherty in the audience here is going to come up. So John, do you want to come up and just ask the question from here? Never has something been so highly improvised.
Hi, Rahul. First of all, it was a great talk, very, very informative, so thank you. What I want to ask was, we ran this type of survey going back in November, but what we did was we incentivized our users. I think we had about 25,000 users at the time, but we incentivized them to complete the survey by giving them a discount on the subscription. Do you think that was the wrong move, in the sense that it could incentivize them to give the wrong answers?
My gut sense is it might introduce bias, but it's probably just a little bit. I think the kind of person who might fill out a survey, I think you would get the people who would fill out the survey anyway. On top of that, you're going to get a subset of people, and depending on your demographic, possibly a small subset of people who would only fill it out because of the financial incentive. You would know your user base, of course, better than anybody else. So I think you might be able to tell of the results that you got, which were filling it in because they would have done so anyway, and which were filling it in because of the financial incentive. And the issue with the latter group is that they may have different opinions about your product, different opinions about your software, and they may be more sensitive to things like value for money and pricing.
So do you think if we were doing this again in the future, remove the incentive and for a more genuine response?
I would always recommend that, yeah.
And so just quickly, one more question.
He's got a whole book of questions here.
I wrote down what I've been listening. So is there also, when we sent out the survey, one of our concerns was, are we almost threatening the customer by saying, asking that question, would you be very disappointed if we take it away? Almost like would they perceive it as, we are going to take it away, or we're going to use your engagement to hike the price? And would that impact the response?
I get asked this question a lot. We must have done this survey, I don't know, just like a really, really large number of times. I have never once heard back from a customer concern that they felt like the product was about to go away. I think people are so used these days to having satisfaction surveys of any kind that when they see it, they recognize it for what it is, which is a company just trying to get better. I've never heard a customer being upset about it.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Okay, that's everything. So thank you very much.
Great. There was a similar question actually that was dialed in before from a guy called Nick Baum from Storyworth. He says, any advice on how to rephrase your PMF question? Because he's got consumers as customers, and his company is producing it's recording family stories, and he was concerned about whether that would send a really alarming signal to the market or to customers.
Yeah, I think my commentary would be the same. It would be interesting if he could send in the precise wording of his question, and then we could sort of take it apart and see if it's likely to cause concern. I mean, ideally, these questions are being sent out over a medium where the customer can quickly get back to you, whether it's email or intercom or whatever kind of system you're using to interact with customers. And I just saw this question being posed on Twitter a few days ago to Sean Ellis and Ethan Shah, who did a lot of the work that I ended up building on for the product's market fit engine. And Ethan's response was, look, don't worry about it. If people do come back with that concern, just say, we're not going anywhere. We're a business that's doing well, and we're just doing this to try and figure out how to build an even better product for you.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Gareth. Oh, sorry. I thought you had a question. Who else here has got a question? William, why don't you come up and then go to... We have an endless stream of questioners for you.
Great. I'm just going to raise my laptop a little bit. Hold on.
Hasn't turned out quite how we were expecting it.
Okay. Move too high. Let's try that. That's a little bit better.
So just bear with me a second here. Great. This is William.
Hi there. So my question is more about who to survey. So in the sense of existing paying customers and trialists. So people who are just taking the free trial, and the pros and cons of doing those. I mean, one of my concerns about the existing customers is we survey them a lot already, and they are paying us, in some cases, good money. So they're kind of voting with their wallets. The trialists, on the other hand, there's a lot more of them, and obviously they haven't bought the product yet. Did you hear that?
Hello? Whoa.
Let's try again. He's on mute. Rahul's on mute.
Rahul?
Rahul, if you can hear us, you're on mute, we think.
Hello? I love technology. Hello. Stop. Are you still? Okay, sorry. We might have to edit this video when it's done. It's not letting me unmute you.
I don't think you've done anything here.
Have you got I'm not able to mute you.
He's going to leave and rejoin.
Oh.
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah, I will say that
keep going.
Able to mute myself. So to the gentleman's question, sir, I didn't catch his name.
William from Real BNC.
Really good question. So there's a general rule of thumb when optimizing any kind of funnel, especially a sales or marketing one, which is to optimize it from the bottom upwards. So your funnel will have many different stages. Obviously, you're going to have your trial lists up here. You're going to have your paying customers down here. And for most companies, there's relatively little sense in optimizing the conversion rate from trialists to customers if your customers are churning out, if you have essentially a leaky bucket. So with that said, I would still survey both groups, but I would analyze their responses a little bit differently, because the reason why someone might convert from trial to customer is going to be different to the reason why a customer might stick around, not churn out, renew, or even buy an upsell, which is, obviously one of the most ideal things that can happen. Assuming that it's a relatively small startup, you're going to have limited resources, and you need to focus those on the problems that matter most. And for most startups, it's actually the bottom of the funnel. For most startups, it's getting your existing customers to stick around and getting them to buy more and buy more seats and buy more features and whatever, rather than getting new customers in. And I would always advise, figure that stuff out before figuring out the top of the funnel. However, do the surveys, collect the data, because whenever you've got the bottom of the funnel in tip-top condition, you'll want the data from the top of the funnel so you can just immediately go and attack that with focus as well.
Great. So, William, in your William, I think you're a pretty well-established organisation. Yeah. There's quite a few people here in some sort of larger organisations, things like the Royal Society of Chemistry, which has got huge amounts of number of products and been around for a very long time. And one of the kind of themes, because we watched the video and we had a little conversation with people beforehand, is a lot of people are kind of thinking about this as a potential way of prioritising product development across a number of products. Have you got any thoughts, any things that you might kind of recommend on that?
Well, let me ask this. Do you mean trying to choose between different products or prioritizing which features to build in any given product?
Features. Let's start with features.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely do that. And there are companies that have used this to determine the efficacy of a new feature. Buffer, which does social media scheduling amongst some other things, used it to determine how customers were enjoying a new feature that was in beta. And I'm happy to send out a link after this to their little experiments. So I think it can work. My commentary there would be, though, the 4 questions continue to be extremely powerful. However, if we're using this to determine the efficacy of a feature, I would not obsess over the 40% benchmark. It kind of doesn't matter at that point, because the benchmark was done on around 100 consumer internet startups and some SaaS companies as well, primarily venture-backed. And it does not really apply to features per se. When you're doing it on features, I would just look for upwards and downwards movements. So you've got your number, it might be like 20% or whatever. You get all the reasons that you could improve the product, all the things that people love. You can use the engine, you can double down on what people love, you can systematically address what people want to see improved. But just because you're below 40% doesn't mean you're failing, and just because you're above 40% doesn't mean you're succeeding. I would just look for upward and downward movement.
Yeah, actually, thank you very much.
So this is Sharon.
Hi, I'm Sharon. So actually, I do have a question. So we are an academic publisher. So we deliver academic content to our end users. They are researchers. So really, the product they want is the academic content. So the platform is just a carrier. So when we send out survey and NPS survey, so we have a continuous NPS survey, it's very hard actually for them to focus on the platform, the product that I manage. They often reply to, oh, the content you need to improve, the quality, the price, is very little to do with the platform. So I find actually the survey hasn't really been working for us. So normally we would have to go out to talk to our users face-to-face interviewing. So I wonder whether, so I haven't tried your 4 questions. It's just sort of any input, your thoughts on what you kind of get user feedback, not by face-to-face interview.
Yeah, so let me make sure I understand the challenge properly. So Sounds like you're running a platform. There is content. Are you producing the content, or is that coming from other people?
So we produce the content. Well, the researchers produce the content, and then they publish with us.
I see.
Yeah, so we are a academic publisher.
Got it.
University pay subscription and have access to our content. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. We kind of have a similar problem in a sense where we have two products, right? So we have a desktop email experience and we have a mobile email experience now. If we just ask the general question, we're going to get general replies. It'll be a smattering of data across both product lines.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get around this, in our survey, we actually ask multiple questions.
Mm-hmm.
So we ask the how you can improve question, we actually ask twice. We say, how can we improve Superhuman on desktop for you? And how can we improve Superhuman on mobile for you? So in your case, what I would suggest that you might try is that you ask the question twice. First of all, ask the question about the content, because even though you may not have direct control over it, it sounds like you certainly have editorial control, and at least the data is interesting. I would ask, how can we improve the content on our platform for you? And then later on in the survey, once the user has clearly understood that that question was about the content, I would also ask, thank you for asking questions about the content. Now, how can we improve the platform and the delivery of the content for you? Or, I mean, you can find the wording that matters, but the wording that's likely to resonate the most. But in summary, I would just ask multiple questions so that it's clearer to the user that one was about the content and one was about the platform.
Cool. Thank you very much. That's really
Great.
helpful.
Okay,
Brilliant.
our next contestant. They're lining up.
Hi, Rahul.
Hello.
We wanted a bit of a clarification. You talked about Superhuman before you'd actually launched it to market, was my understanding, but you still said you went ahead and did the product market fit engine application. I'm sort of presuming, filling in the blanks by saying that you applied that to early adopters or trialers or beta users that you had, because otherwise you'd sort of be applying it to yourself, really.
Mm-hmm.
So was that the case, that you actually had a user base? Because often with us, we have product and it's a question of when do you go to market, and you just go to market with what you think is the best product market fit, that you've got it, and then you just apply the survey and see where you've hit it or not hit it.
Yeah. That's a really good question. And it kind of, I think there's a deeper philosophical question here, which is what is launch and when should you do it? And a good entrepreneur friend who's much wiser than I am gave me the following piece of advice, which resonated deeply. He said, you only really launch for 3 reasons, or you should only launch for one of 3 reasons. Either you need more capital, and therefore you need the buzz and the hype, or you need more customers, and therefore you need the leads, or you need to hire, and therefore you need potential candidates. And if you're struggling across one or more of those 3 things, then launch can be a reasonable short-term fix. It will add some momentum. To date, we still have not launched. Superhuman is not publicly available. You cannot just turn up on our website and sign up for it. There's a wait list of 130,000 people.
Tell me about it.
So you've actually got invited early adopters or a user base?
We have an invited early user base. We're definitely beginning to cross the chasm. Not all of our users are what I would classify as early adopters, but there's an early user base. So here's what I would recommend. When you're prior to that, when you're less than that 40% benchmark, assuming the benchmark applies to your kind of company, I would maintain a trickle of new users coming into the product. Ideally, somewhere around a trickle of new users, such that you get, at the very least, tens of new responses every week or 2. And once you're above the 40% benchmark, I would recommend leaning in to the new user stream and adding as many new users as you can obviously with the caveat that it doesn't break sales, that it doesn't break customer support, that it doesn't break the rest of the business, because all of those things are going to have to scale as well. And I think that's, most growing organizations can do both of those things. The whole point of the exercise is not to throw tons of users at it until you're successful with the trickle.
Okay. Is there time for me to ask just one other?
Go for it.
We produce product, and we produce product for ourselves and also for our clients. As a consultancy offering software development to a client, we're intrigued about whether we could actually apply the survey engine within that in-service environment, really. Because what are we saying if we go away and don't consult with you anymore? Will you be very disappointed? It's an interesting proposition for us.
Yeah, I think you definitely could. And in fact, it would be particularly interesting, especially for a service business, because the main benefit question, which is always the most interesting question, might actually help shine a light on some points of differentiation that perhaps you may have overlooked compared to other service companies who are selling into the same space. So I think it would be a really fascinating thing to run. But just like the other question, I wouldn't obsess over the 40% benchmark. It's unlikely to apply in your environment.
That's all right.
Wouldn't. Oh, you're back.
So you just froze. You froze basically on that entire sentence.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure where I cut out. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Can now.
Perfectly now.
Great. So in summary, I was saying I think it'll be a really fascinating thing to run. It might help you find a point of differentiation. I just wouldn't obsess over the 40% benchmark because it wasn't benchmarked on service companies.
Yeah.
I would just look for upwards and downwards movements.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Great, fantastic. Alex, who is head of engineering, director of engineering at Simprints.
Hi, Rahul. Thank you for doing this Q&A. I actually emailed you a couple of weeks ago to share a story about how Reportive allowed me to meet one of my users in Istanbul. So
yes.
Thank you for that. The question I wanted to ask is, I know you've mostly spent time in the consumer-focused space, but I'm curious if you've heard stories of people who have tried to apply this methodology in the B2B space, or in situations where your users may not be the ones who are actually the decision makers of whether they use the product or not.
Mm-hmm. Yes, people have definitely done the survey, and it can be just as effective. In the case where you have classic sort of B2B enterprise sales, the people who buy the product, maybe the managers or even the information officers, and the people who are using the product, maybe a completely different set of people, I would still run the survey. I would, in fact, run the survey on both sets of constituents. I would run it on the executives or the managers, and also on the end users. These days, pretty much any enterprise software is not just bought top-down, it's evangelized bottom-up, and it's very unlikely that you're able to build a great company with a good product if the end users don't actually like your product. Both sets of people are probably looking for different features or different results out of the software, and that's why I think it's important to run both sets of surveys. Again, similar to the other answer, if it's a small organization, you can likely only focus on one constituent at a time, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't collect the data from both constituents simultaneously.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And do you think that the data is still valuable even when in a B2B environment, the number of users that you have is going to be a lot less than in a consumer environment?
Absolutely. So I think you get statistically significant results when you start getting more than 40 respondents, essentially. So if you can get 40 respondents over a 2-3 week time frame in either set, then that is going to be directionally correct for that set of people.
Great, thank you.
Right. Sybil. This is Sybil from Redgate, and she's got questions. Remember Redgate?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that. It's very kind of you to do this Q&A. So my question was about, I work on like new product development, And at the moment, our product can kind of go in 3 different directions. My issue is that we feel that the product kind of does one thing better than the rest. So if we sent this survey out now, it would almost be like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's like it's really good at this one thing, and therefore we kind of go down this route. But if it's more valuable to go down one of the other routes, we might not hit that. It might not be more valuable, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to kind of understand, like, how do you negate the risk of kind of following down this one path rather than leaving yourself open and closing yourself off to opportunities?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Let me search for the immortal words of Paul Graham. So I'm going to find this thing. In the first round article that I wrote, which is kind of a more in-depth discussion, I actually addressed this directly. And okay. So I'm just going to quote Paul Graham here because he says it better than I could say. When a startup launches, there have to be at least some users who really need what they're making. Not just people who can see themselves using it one day, but who want it urgently. And usually this initial group of users is small for the simple reason that if there were something that large numbers of people urgently needed, and that could be built with the amount of effort that a startup usually puts into version 1, or even a company like Gates, it would probably already exist. Which means you have to compromise in one dimension. You can either build something a large number of people want a small amount, or something a small number of people want a large amount. Choose the latter. Not all ideas of that type are good startup ideas, but nearly all good startup ideas are of that type. In theory, this is the relevant part, this sort of hill climbing could get you into trouble. You could end up on a local maximum, but in practice, that never happens. The maxima in the space of product ideas are not spiky and isolated. Most fairly good ideas are adjacent to the better ones. In other words, what I'm saying is, don't worry about doubling down on what's resonating today, because in practice, that's adjacent to an even better idea. It's not going to be a mountain away. And so you can always, at some point, come back and try something new, or build an experimentation framework into your product management process. Like you're going to spend 20% of your time building new stuff. It's a much worse mistake not to double down on the things that people already are.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you.
So,
go on, yeah.
Sure. So I just want to ask about what if the metric doesn't grow? So I see, like, it was very neatly kind of every quarter kind of it improves, but what happens if it goes down? Like, have you ever experienced where that's happened, or what would you suggest?
Yeah. Well, there's a law of metrics. I think, I don't know what it's called, but Andrew Chen, who's now a partner at Andreessen Horowitz, has noted that basically every metric goes down over time. This is for a number of reasons. Channels get saturated, leads get lower quality, your competition is always getting better, your users get less excited. So gravity will pull this metric down. There is relatively, I mean, it's kind of like entropy, right? It's just going to happen. So with that in mind, I think that we have to build product management processes that assume that's going to happen and are preemptively fighting that by constantly running these surveys, by constantly working on them, and by tracking the numbers over time. So in our organization, we actually track the number weekly, monthly, quarterly. We can see whether it's going up or down, and there have been times when it's gone up, and there have been times when it's gone down, and the times when it's gone down have generally corresponded to trying to broaden the market, and then we encounter new types of users, we have to build new kinds of things, address the way that we're doing business, and then it starts going up again. And this is why I'm a fan of doing things in a sustainable, systematic manner, because you have to fight entropy day by day.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Great. So, number of other kind of questions kind of come through. How can you apply this to service businesses? How can you apply this to event businesses, say? Because we actually, when we were listening to Rahul's talk, and he was doing it on the last day, so he put us under a bit of pressure. Not nearly as much pressure as we had 3 minutes before this was supposed to start, but that's another story. We ripped up our survey forms and redid them and asked basically people what they were thinking about. And actually, we've always done incredibly well on NPS. I mean, our lowest NPS for an event has been 88. We had a pretty high, in terms of who would be disappointed, it was something like 70% of the people, or very disappointed, was 70% of the people. How am I going to use that type of information to build our product and build and develop our product, a conference?
Yeah, great question. So
it's a selfish question, but
well, I mean, I don't think it's that selfish. You know, we run events. Every startup I know runs events. Every big company I know runs events. It's actually a critical part of doing business today, I think, to build a community. So first of all, I would say that the NPS question is still really valid. I remember we took that out in last year's conference. I would actually leave it in there. And when we run our satisfaction surveys, we leave the NPS question in there because they measure two different things. The very disappointed score measures a degree of emotional connection and a perceived dependency on a product or on a service. And that's very fundamental to success. But once you've got that layer, the next layer, which is distribution and growth, is actually, for almost any product or service you care to look at, highly dependent on word of mouth. In fact, there is no product that has been mass market successful or even niche market successful without word of mouth amongst its customers. And that's directly what NPS gets to, which is how likely are you to recommend and how did you describe it when you recommend it. So we do both questions. We do both sets of surveys. I think they measure different things and they're both incredibly important. When it comes to how do you use the data specifically to improve an event or an event's business, I think the two questions, actually the three questions, what is the main benefit? Who do you think would most benefit? And how can we improve it for you can be directly applied. I don't know what the survey results said for business or software, but I'm happy to take a look at them with you. But I would recommend just doubling down on whatever it is people said they enjoyed the most. And hopefully there were some themes in where people said that you guys could improve as well. And if I had a team of a few people, I'd have half those people working on one piece and another half those people working on the other piece.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Well, I will love to pick you up on that with Paddy at another point maybe. But another question that we had kind of coming in was how, because human and it segues out of that point, Rahul, you are measuring emotion in a sense, and it's a much more subjective thing. How do you filter for people kind of just wanting to say nice things so they don't piss you off or upset you? Because this is emotion, not.
Yeah, I think if you are charging money for your product, that is a much less than if you're giving your product away for free. Also, as soon as you start getting out of the set of people who know you or who have met you, again, the risk dramatically decreases. So this was the case for us. You know, our first 20, 30, 40 respondents, there was an element of they were our friends or they were our closest investors. That was one of the reasons why I charged from day one. Even for the investors in Superhuman, I charged them money because I wanted to start separating the closeness they had to the company from the fact that they were paying $30 a month for a service, hundreds of dollars a year. I really want them to think about value for money, and I want them to think about the product. You know, especially for your business, I wouldn't worry about it because it's a premium product and it's a good product. So I would expect people.
I love the internet.
Mark, afraid I have a phone call that I need to jump on. It is past the hour.
I appreciate that.
I would suggest this, if I may. I am happy to answer all of these questions. If you can send them over to me via email, I can do a sentence or a paragraph response and get them back to you, and then that way have their email, so folks can have their questions answered.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely brilliant. Well, look, thank you, Rahul, for joining us. It was so great to have you on. It's been a brilliant. It was a brilliant talk, and it's one that a lot of people have talked a lot about and been referencing, and we've had lots of views, which is great. Would love to pick up a conversation with you, but really appreciate your time. And once again, both to Rahul and to everybody that was excitedly signed up to watch. I think we had a couple of hundred people online who haven't been able to join us. We tested and we did as much as we possibly could, and it all went horribly wrong right at the last minute. But thank you so much for being so insightful, and let's stay in touch and maybe see you at another business software soon. And please process my. I literally, there's one thing that Superhuman does that I was like, oh my God, that's worth $30 a month. And that's when you open an email, you send an email, and then the next one's there ready for you instead of having to find backwards. And I have ADHD, so you know how that goes for productivity. You really just want one thing in front of you the whole time to focus on. And I said in my application, tell me what bloody laptop I need to buy. And I think it was rejected because I don't think your system knows tell me what bloody laptop is. But anyway.
I'm afraid I do have to run.
All right, take very good care. Thank you so much, Rahul. See you later.